Hey everyone, Patrick CK here. In my last video, I shared my experiences with the Canon R7 over the past year. Today, I'm diving into the lens that's been my constant companion with the R7, the Tamron 18-400mm telephoto lens. I picked it up for its insane versatility, and after a year of use, I'm finally sharing my long-term thoughts. What's great, what's not, and if I'd still recommend it. If you missed the 1-year follow-up on the Canon R7, I'll leave a card linking to that video. I love going on long hikes on the weekends, and photography is a big part of that, whether it's capturing vast landscapes or spotting wildlife along the trail. But one challenge I've run into is that when you're focused on a distant object like a deer or an eagle, and suddenly something interesting happens right in front of you, there's no time to swap lenses. By the time you do, the moment is gone. That's exactly why I wanted to try this lens. It's designed to cover nearly every shooting scenario without ever needing to swap glass. As f-stoppers recently said, stop collecting lenses and start creating images. And honestly, that sums up this lens well. It might not be perfect, but it keeps you shooting instead of swapping lenses. As I mentioned in my Canon R7 review, I'm not a professional photographer, intermediate at best, so this review is geared toward entry-level hobbyists and those looking to get a great all-in-one lens. The Tamron 18-400mm is a beast of a lens, not in size, but in versatility. It's a super zoom covering everything from wide angle to extreme telephoto. But despite that range, it's surprisingly compact and lightweight for what it offers. And coming in at just $649 last year, it's probably the best value all-in-one lens available. Anything else with this kind of range will easily be into the thousands. One of the things I really appreciate about the Tamron is how well it balances versatility and portability. At just 705 grams or 1.5 pounds, this lens is impressively lightweight for its zoom range. That makes a huge difference when you're out on a long hike, especially if you're like me and carry other hiking essentials in your bag. Another practical feature is the 72mm filter thread. It's a pretty standard size, so finding filters, whether it's a UV, ND, or polarizer, is easy and won't break the bank. Personally, I've been using the K&F Magnetic filter system, which makes swapping filters and putting on the lens cap incredibly quick and hassle-free, as opposed to screwing filters on and off. I can just snap them into place. Link to the set I use will be below. Now, even though this is a super zoom, it actually has a minimum focus distance of 0.5 meters or 17.7 inches throughout the zoom range. That means you can still get in close for detailed shots of flowers, textures, or even small wildlife without needing a dedicated macro lens. And when it comes to background blur, the 7 rounded aperture blades help create a smooth, natural-looking bokeh. It's not quite the creamy separation you'd expect from a prime lens, but for a zoom, it does a solid job of keeping the background soft and non-distracting. The lens has leak-resistant seals throughout the barrel, giving some protection against the elements. While I wouldn't take it out in a downpour, it holds up fine in a light mist or drizzle, so you don't have to panic if the weather shifts while you're packing up. It's important to mention this lens was originally designed for the Canon EF and Nikon F mount DSLRs, but with the right adapter you can use it on a much wider range of APS-C cameras. For my setup, I'm using Canon's EF EOS to R mount adapter, and while it's a bit pricey, I can confidently say it's worth it to ensure a seamless communication between the lens and the camera. If you're interested in grabbing one, I'll leave a link in the description. Even with the adapter, the R7 and Tamron combo fit perfectly in my favorite day trip hiking bag. Tamron uses a HLD or high-low torque modulated drive motor for autofocus. And over the past year, the autofocus system has been reliable and responsive. Paired with the Canon R7's dual pixel AF system, this lens locks on the subjects quickly, whether it's a fast-moving bird or a twitchy squirrel. It's not as fast as high-end primes, but it's more than capable for an all-in-one lens. That said, in low light, the autofocus does slow down a bit, which is expected at f6.3 on the long end. It's not a deal breaker, but something to keep in mind if you're frequently shooting in dimly lit conditions. One testament to the quality of the Tamron is how over the past year, the zoom ring is still just as smooth as when it was new. It hasn't loosened up or developed any rough spots, which is impressive given how much I've used it. One thing to note is that the zoom ring isn't uniformly smooth throughout its range. There is some resistance between 150 and 250 millimeters, likely due to the movement of additional lens groups around that range. Another minor issue is lens creep, which is when a zoom lens extends or retracts on its own due to gravity. Tamron includes a zoom lock switch, which helps prevent this, especially during storage when the lens might extend on its own. Speaking of handling, one thing I had to get used to is turning the body clockwise to zoom, which is a departure from my old 55 to 250 millimeter Canon lens, which zooms in a clockwise rotation. It's a minor thing, but if you've been using Canon lenses for years, there is an adjustment period. Tamron's vibration compensation, or VC system, keeps handheld shots steady, even at 400 millimeters or in low light, making a huge difference for real-world handheld use. Without VC, shooting at 400 millimeter handheld would be a nightmare, but this system keeps things surprisingly steady. Now let's talk about the real test, image quality. A lens with this kind of zoom range always involves trade-offs. So how does it hold up? On the low end, shots are sharp across the frame, with some softening around the edges past 300 millimeters. You will need really good lighting to get the best performance beyond this range. Chromatic aberration is kept in check thanks to its low dispersion and hybrid aspherical elements. There's some distortion, but you really have to zoom in to see it. Barrel distortion and pin cushioning is very limited, even if you're shooting a building like this one. Putting some guides up shows the lines are still straight even on the edges of the shot at practically every zoom range. I'll be making a video all about zoom performance of this lens compared to a smartphone. So if you're curious about how they stack up, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Now that I've used this lens for more than a year, do I still recommend it? If you want one lens to do it all, absolutely. The Tamron 18-400mm is the most versatile zoom I've used. And for hiking, travel, and wildlife photography, it's a great choice. It's worth mentioning that Tamron has other similar models, like the 18-300mm version for Fuji cameras. They all use the same core technology, same autofocus system, VC stabilization, and optical design principles, so you'll see similar performance across the lineup. Ultimately, you can pick the one that best suits your shooting style and requirements. Best of all, almost all of the lenses, including this one, come with a 6-year warranty in the US. That wraps up my 1-year follow-up. I'd love to hear from you guys. Do you use this lens? What's been your experience? Drop a comment below. Also, if you want me to review my hiking gear and accessories, let me know. I'd be happy to share what I carry on hikes. If you're ready to add this lens to your kit, you can find it on Amazon at the link in the description. If you enjoyed this content, like and share and subscribe. Until next time, this has been Patrick CK. Goodbye.